Hello, dear ones.
Hello. Namaste.
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 So, Brahmadas, how is your Shiva cat?
He's good. We just finished our evening meditation and he's still in the meditation room, so he may come down and join us. We'll see.
That's good. There's a wonderful poem in that book, Love Poems from God, about Tukaram meditating with his cat. Maybe some evening it's a short poem, maybe I'll get it out and read it. It's fun.
Okay, let me know when you do that and I'll make sure to attend that meeting.
Well, it'll be spontaneous. I won't be able to let you know ahead of time, probably. It'll just be something I'll decide to do. So, good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Whoever's making those noises, please make it stop. Om. Om. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Well, welcome to our Wednesday evening study of the 5th chapter of Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga. I don't know the page because I'm not working from the book. I simply copy this into a Word doc, or actually a Pages doc, and read from that. So we left off last week. That allows us to start here. Now, all these various manifestations of religion, in whatever shape and form they have come to mankind, have this one common central basis. It is the preaching of freedom, the way out of this world. They never came to reconcile the world and religion, but to cut the Gordian knot, to establish religion in its own ideal, and not to compromise with the world. This is what every religion preaches, and the duty of the Vedanta is to harmonize all these aspirations, to make manifest the common ground between all the religions of the world, the highest as well as the lowest. What we call the most arrant superstition and the highest philosophy really have a common aim, in that they both try to show the way out of the same difficulty. And in most cases, this way is through the help of someone who is not himself bound by the laws of nature. In one word, someone who is free. In spite of all the difficulties and differences of opinion about the nature of the one free agent, whether he is a personal God or a sentient being like a man, whether masculine, feminine, or neuter, whether masculine, feminine, or neuter, and the discussions have been endless, the fundamental idea is the same. In spite of the almost hopeless contradictions of the different systems, we find the golden thread of unity running through them all. And in this philosophy, this golden thread has been traced, revealed little by little to our view. And the first step to this revelation is the common ground that all are advancing toward freedom. Now, before we go ahead, is there any question or discussion about what the Swami has said? He's encompassed all the world's religions and said they have all this, the common ground that all are advancing toward freedom. Anything at all about that before we go on?
Brother Shankara,
Yes,
it's a self-liberation, right? Self-realization and liberation.
well,
Advance.
that's the way it's defined in Sanatana Dharma. In Christianity, it's salvation.
Thank you.
In the Andean religions, it is seen as becoming one with the Pachacamac, that which is the creator of all existence. And just exactly what the word is in Aymara or Quechua, I don't know.
Thank you, bless you.
But, you know, we speak of it as self-realization, liberation, moksha. Anybody else? Anything at all? All right. One curious fact present in the midst of all our joys and sorrows, difficulties and struggles, is that we are surely journeying toward freedom. The question was practically this. And by practically, he means in a practical sense. The question in a practical sense was this: what is this universe? From what does it arise? Into what does it go? And the answer was, in freedom it rises, in freedom it rests, and into freedom it melts away. This idea of freedom you cannot relinquish. In the Christian tradition, we hear the phrase, know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Free from all limitation, free from all bondage, free to know the peace that passeth all understanding. So here in the West, we're familiar with these words. And so this is the kind of thing that the Swami was gesturing toward when he was talking about it arises in freedom, it rests in freedom, and into freedom it melts away. This idea of freedom you cannot relinquish. Your actions, your very lives will be lost without it. Every moment, nature is proving us to be slaves and not free. Yet simultaneously rises the other idea that still we are free. At every step, we are knocked down, as it were, by Maya and shown that we are bound. And yet at the same moment, together with this blow, together with this feeling that we are bound, comes the other feeling that we are free. Some inner voice tells us that we are free. But if we attempt to realize that freedom, to make it manifest, we find the difficulties almost insuperable. Yet in spite of that, it insists on asserting itself inwardly. I am free, I am free. And if you study all the various religions of the world, you will find this idea expressed. Not only religion, you must not take this word in its narrow sense, but the whole life of society is the assertion of that one principle of freedom. All movements are the assertion of that one freedom. That voice has been heard by everyone, whether he knows it or not. That voice which declares, come unto me, all ye that are labor, come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden. These are the words of Christ. It may not be this in the same language or the same form of speech, but in some form or another, that voice calling for freedom has been with us. Yes, we are born here on account of that voice. Every one of our movements is for that. We are all rushing toward this freedom. We are all following that voice, whether we know it or not, as the children of the village were attracted by the music of the flute player. So we are all following the music of the voice without knowing it. Does everybody know what is the music, follow the music of the flute player? The Pied Piper of Hamlin. The Pied Piper comes to, he's hired by the village to charm the rats out of the village. And then he's not paid. So then he charms all of the children out of the village. They all follow him. So whether we know it or not, as the children of the village were attracted by the music of the flute player, so we are all following the music of that voice without knowing it. Any disagreement with what the Swami is saying? Any comments or questions about what the Swami is saying? He's making a flat out assertion that everything is moving toward greater freedom.
So if the Pied Piper was the paid piper, he wouldn't have led the children out. But when he says, so we are all following the music of the voice, what is the voice?
The voice is that one that says, "Come to me, all ye who are heavy laden, and I shall give you rest. My burden is easy. My yoke, my burden is light. My yoke is easy." In other words, Christ is saying, "Come to me, and I will give you what is necessary to be free." And it won't be onerous. It won't be a great struggle. Why? Because Christ said, "I have overcome the world." And in saying that, he means I can share that with you. This is that what the Swami says, these religions are started by one who is free, not bound. Good comment. Anything else? Okay.
But I have a comment.
Yes, Sonny.
Sorry, there's some background noise. But I mean, how does one become free? Because as Rousseau says, man is born free, but everywhere he finds himself in chains.
Well, the Swami's going to tell us.
Okay,
The
great.
Swami will tell us. The short answer is to follow the words of one of these great ones who is free, has discovered the way to freedom. And two things are true. First, they will show you the way. And if you are sincere, they will share their spiritual treasure with you. And make the path smoother than it would have otherwise been. That's what Christ meant when he said, "Come to me, all ye who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. My burden is light. My burden is easy. My yoke is light." Thanks, Sonny. That was exactly what we needed to hear is, how is this going to happen? The Swami will tell us. Anything else? All right. Now notice that the Swami says that when we follow that voice, certain things happen. And he means relatively spontaneously. We are ethical when we follow that voice. Not only the human soul, but all creatures, from the lowest to the highest, have heard the voice and are rushing toward it. And in the struggle are either combining with each other or pushing each other out of the way. Thus comes competition, joys, struggles, life, pleasure, and death, and the whole universe is nothing but the result of this mad struggle to reach the voice. This is the manifestation of nature. What happens then? The scene begins to shift. As soon as you know the voice and understand what it is, the whole scene changes. I'm going to read that again because here is the pivot point. What happens then? The scene begins to shift. As soon as you know the voice and understand what it is, the whole scene changes. The same world which was the ghastly battlefield of Maya is now changed into something good and beautiful. We no longer curse nature, nor say that the world is horrible and that it is all vain. We need no longer weep and wail. As soon as we understand the voice, we see. As soon as we understand the voice, we reassert why this struggle should be here. This fight, this competition, this difficulty, this cruelty, these little pleasures and joys, we see that they are in the nature of things, because without them, there would be no going toward that voice, to attain which we are all destined, whether we know it or not. All human life, all nature, therefore, is struggling to attain to freedom. The sun is moving toward that goal, so is the earth encircling round the sun, so is the moon encircling round the earth. To that goal, the planet is moving and the air is blowing. Everything is struggling toward that. The saint is going toward that voice. He cannot help it. It is no glory to him. Notice this. This is why you will find that the saints are humble. Everything is struggling toward that. The saint is going toward that voice. He cannot help it. It is no glory to him. Why? Because he has heard that voice in the depths of his being and understands what it is. He cannot help it. It is no glory to him. So is the sinner. The charitable man is going straight toward that voice and cannot be hindered. The miser is also going toward the same destination. The greatest worker of good hears the same voice within, and he cannot resist it. He must go toward the voice. So with the most errant idler. The greatest worker of good hears the same voice within, and he cannot resist it. He must go toward the voice. So with the most errant idler. One stumbles more than another, and him who stumbles more we call bad. Him who stumbles less we call good. Good and bad are never two different things. They are one and the same. The difference is not one of kind, but of degree. Once again, a very bold statement about good and evil, about struggle and everything having to do with how things change when you hear that voice and begin to heed it, understand it. Everything changes, including this idea of good and evil. Good and bad are never two different things. They are one and the same. The difference is not one of kind, but of degree. Any question or comment?
I have a question regarding the voice.
Mm-hmm.
So is this literal voice or metaphorical voice? Like, maybe an example. This is not the same as the internal dialogue that we sometimes have going on about, whatever is the situation.
No, it's not that chatter of the left mind. But once one hears and understands the voice, one hears it in the left mind as well as, this is what's meant by when Chaitanya says, chant the name of the Lord and his glory unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean, and quench that mighty forest fire, worldly lust, raging furiously within. That forest fire of lust represents itself in the chatter and the restlessness of the mind. When the heart or right mind is purified, that actually what it is it's always pure. It's just encrusted with mental impressions that obscure and seem to fragment it. So the voice that we hear, it comes to us, as the Swami says, in the founders of these various religions. Jesus spoke it, Sri Ramakrishna spoke it, the Buddha spoke it, Rama spoke it, Krishna spoke it. That voice spoke with that voice. Ultimately, as you turn your direction inward, you hear that voice. Some people don't hear it as a voice saying words. Swami Prabhupada said, feel that living presence. That living presence is the truth that is embodied in the words that are spoken by the great teachers. But some people don't hear words. They have this feeling. They hear music. But the attraction toward greater freedom, the attraction toward greater less, the attraction toward being less entangled is clear, however the voice is heard or however the feeling is experienced. Is that clear?
Just working on it still.
Okay. But it is not the chatter of our left mind.
Mm.
The chatter of our left mind is nothing more than the effects of the gunas touching on our past mental impressions. Imagine this great field of your past mental impressions as a great field of wind chimes hanging there. And the winds of the gunas come and blow into your awareness. And they ring those wind chimes. These are our thoughts, our emotions. And to a great degree, because of our familiarity with name and form, and our creation of our universe, our world out of name and form, as Krishna says in chapter 3 of the Gita, this is nothing more than the gunas attaching themselves to gunas. So that's what most of the chatter in our left mind is. There are a few moments in which there is clarity, but they're rare because we allow ourselves to be hypnotized by that chatter, and we believe in the reality of what it's telling us. it's very practiced at telling us a story that the story is that we are not free. Anything else from anyone? That was a very pregnant and on point question.
Brother Shankara, Rishikesh here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I certainly can.
Thank you, sir. So this is just a thought that occurred to me, but I'll share with everyone. Reading that one stumbles more than another, and him who stumbles more, we call him bad, who call him less good. All of those, that description, that entire paragraph reminded me of something that we say very colloquially, that this is a rat race. Everyone is either ahead or the back at some point. And then we sometimes also say, I don't want to be part of this rat race. It almost seems like, it is a colloquial way of saying that in the end of the day, we are all running a race. Some people are ahead, some people are behind, but that should not bother us. We are all moving forward, and that is our whatever destiny at that point. And we should not worry about how far is someone, or how back, or where you are. And I think you should just focus on what is.
Rishikesh, you're absolutely right. If we compare ourselves with others, we immediately increase our entanglement. It's very hard for us to be unitary and not compare ourselves with others and acknowledge our uniqueness. But you're absolutely right. When we see ourselves in a rat race, when we see ourselves in this competition for scarce resources or for whatever it is that we're competing for, there's a real penalty to that in limitation. Very well observed. Anything else?
This connects to what Rishikesh was saying.
Yes, Sunny.
So just like, wait, one moment. Okay, it's fine. Sorry. Just the notion of like what is considered a successful person versus an unsuccessful person. I was reading somewhere that, like, for example, particular fields, if you're going into academia, you're considered successful. Whereas if someone is a political activist, he is considered unsuccessful. So I guess it kind of relates to the whole rat race kind of deal.
And Swami Vivekananda says the individual who sits in a cave and thinks one great thought that is full of truth will more transform the world than either of the people that you just talked about, and therefore can be considered in those terms the greatest success. Now, does that mean that Sunny should go sit in a cave? Absolutely not. Sunny should do whatever it is that is appropriate for Sunny to do. and succeed at that. And of course, it's important for us to discern what it is that that we really want to do. Most of us never discern what it is that we really want to do. Thank you, Sunny. Anything else from anyone? Okay, it's just the half hour. We have lots of time. Now, if the manifestation of this power of freedom is really governing the whole universe, applying that to religion, our special study, we find this idea has been the one assertion throughout. Take the lowest form of religion, where there is worship of the departed ancestors, of certain powerful and cruel or certain, take the lowest form of religion, where there is the worship of departed ancestors, or certain powerful and cruel gods. What is the prominent idea about the gods or departed ancestors? That they are superior to nature, not bound by its restrictions. The worshipper has, no doubt, very limited ideas of nature. He himself cannot pass through a wall, nor fly up into the skies, but the gods whom he worships can do these things. What is meant by that philosophically? That the assertion of freedom is there, that the gods whom he worships are superior to nature as he knows it. The gods whom he worships are superior to nature as he knows it. So with those who worship the still higher beings. As the idea of nature expands, the idea of the soul, which is superior to nature, also expands. I'm going to repeat that. That's very important to our understanding of where the Swami is going. So with those who worship still higher beings, as the idea of nature expands, the idea of the soul, which is superior to nature, also expands until we come to what we call monotheism, which holds that there is Maya, nature, and that there is some being who is the ruler of this Maya. Here Vedanta begins, where those monotheistic ideas that first appear. Here Vedanta begins, when those monotheistic ideas first appear. But the Vedanta philosophy wants further explanation. This explanation that there is a being beyond all these manifestations of Maya, who is superior to and independent of Maya, and who is attracting us toward himself, and that we are all going toward him, is very good, says the Vedanta. But yet the perception is not clear. The vision is dim and hazy, although it does not directly contradict reason. Just as in your hymn it says, "Nearer, my God, to thee." He's speaking to Christians, of course, London, 1896. Just as in your hymn it says, "Nearer, my God, just as in your hymn it said, "Nearer, my God, to thee." The same hymn would be very good to the Vedantin, only he would change a word and make it, "Nearer, my God, to me." The idea that the goal is far off, far beyond nature, attracting us all toward it, has to be brought nearer and nearer without degrading or degenerating it. The God of heaven becomes the God in nature, and the God in nature becomes the God who is nature, and the God who is nature becomes the God within this temple of the body, and the God dwelling within the temple of the body at last becomes the temple itself, becomes the soul and man, and there it reaches the last words it can reach. He whom the sages have been seeking in all these places is in our own hearts. The voice that you heard was right, says the Vedanta, but the direction you gave to the voice was wrong. That idea of freedom that you perceived was correct, but you projected it outside yourself, and that was your mistake. Bring it nearer and nearer until you find It was all the time within you. It was the self of your own self. That freedom was your own nature. And this Maya never bound you. Nature never has power over you. Like a frightened child, you were dreaming that it was throttling you. And the release from this fear is the goal. Not only to see it intellectually, but to perceive it, actualize it much more definitely than we perceive this world. Then we shall know that we are free. Then and then alone will all difficulties vanish. Then will all the perplexities of heart be smoothed away, all crookedness made straight. Then will vanish the delusion of manifoldness and nature, and Maya, instead of being a horrible, hopeless dream, as it is now, will become beautiful. And this earth, instead of being a prison house, will become our playground. And even dangers and difficulties, even all sufferings will become defied and show us their real, deified, will become deified and show us their real nature, will show us that behind everything, as the substance of everything, He is standing, and that He is the one real self. So I said, Sonny, that the Swami would tell us the answer. Does that seem to provide the answer to you?
It was a lot. Oh, sorry about that. He mentioned something about perception. And does our perception need to be sharpened in a sense for us to become free?
Say it again. Does our perception need to become what again?
Sharpened in order to aid us in becoming free?
Yes, that's exactly it. Sharpened to the point where it is one-pointed. You used exactly the right word. This is the process of learning what the Swami talks about actualizing it, actualizing.
So does purifying the heart help us in our perception, or what does?
Purifying your entire awareness does that, and purifying the heart is part of it. And Chaitanya was one great teacher who came along and gave us a method, a simple, straightforward method. Sri Ramakrishna endorsed that method and said it is very appropriate for this time, this waning, this last of the Kali Yuga, the Iron Age. But there are many, as the Swami pointed out, there are many ways. For the Christians, there are methodologies and ways. For the Muslims, particularly the Sufis, there are methods and ways. For all of Islam, there is the praying 5 times a day and coming to the mosque on Friday and so on. All of these are part of a methodology for purifying our awareness. Swami Vivekananda taught 4 methodologies here in the West: work, worship, psychic control, and philosophy. That is to say, karma yoga, bhakti yoga, raja yoga, and Jnana Yoga. These are all ways that we have of purifying our awareness and sharpening our attention until we can hold one thought for long enough to have it actualize itself within us, which is what Patanjali in his Yoga Sutra says happens. You do these 6 steps, he says. You do these 6 limbs of yoga. And then something happens to you. Sri Ramakrishna said it's even simpler than that. He said, just hold God to your heart. Yearn for God to manifest herself, himself, itself in your heart, which is where the Swami was pointing us to. Inside. Shed one tear, Sri Ramakrishna says. Shed one tear of true yearning for that to happen. And as the Swami said at the very beginning of what we read this evening, everything changes of itself.
Brother Shankara.
Yes, Swayam.
Obviously, realizing this absolute, the freedom, while in this embodied, life itself is the ultimate goal, and makes then the remainder of the life like being in a mansion of mirth. But like Sri Krishna
That's the
says,
promise.
but Sri Krishna says in the Gita that out of so many millions, only a few will seek me, and out of that, only a few will reach me. But also the promise that nothing will ever go wasted. So that is a big encouragement when we keep facing, obstacle after obstacle, to keep that in mind that nothing ever gets wasted. So at some point, we will get there.
That you just, if you do the math, 1 in a million will succeed. Yes? The Sri Krishna's mathematics. I once said to Swami Swahananda, yes, 1 in a million, but why not me? Why shouldn't that 1 in a million be me? And he smiled a very big, broad smile and said, yes. How many of us are represented here on the screen? 12, 13 of us? Looks like 3 by 4 plus 1. 13. How many millions of people are within literally a rifle shot of here, or where you're sitting, where each of us is sitting? Why not you? Why not you? Sri Ramakrishna said, practice just a little and someone will come forward to help you. Now that someone is resident in here, already here, nowhere else. Well, it's everywhere for all of that matter, but it is especially evident right here. As Swami Prabhavananda said, the chosen ideal, that aspect of the divine that appeals to your awareness and your heart, the chosen ideal is you yourself, no different. Learn to feel that living presence. And learning to feel that living presence is the same thing as hearing the voice that Swami talking about, Swami Vivekananda talking about, hearing that voice And as you practice being in that presence, you understand what it is, and therefore what the truth of your being is. And that's what transforms everything.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
There's no need to be worrying about another lifetime. Sri Ramakrishna came, Holy Mother said it last night. We were studying Holy Mother's life last night. Holy Mother said, Sri Ramakrishna came to set everyone free, but only if you accept the invitation. It will never happen as an insistence. And what does it say in the evening hymn? How great was thy sacrifice, freely choosing thy birth in this prison, our iron age, to unchain us and set us free. Now, I'm not saying you have to adopt Sri Ramakrishna. As the Swami pointed out, every one of these great teachers has said the same thing. Christ said, the kingdom of heaven is within. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all else shall be added unto you. He who drinks from my mouth shall not taste death. In other words, shall be liberated, shall be free from the cycle of rebirth and death. Krishna says the same thing in the Gita. Even a little practice of this yoga, he says, of karma yoga, even a little practice of this yoga will free you from the terrible wheel of rebirth and death. Free you.
Thank you very much, Brother Shankara.
Anything else from anyone?
I have a question.
Sure, Sonny.
So this is kind of unrelated, but why does the Buddha, instead of saying "I'll free you," he says "Be a light unto yourself"?
Well, where is the light? I just said, and the Buddha says, the light is within you. Be that
Okay.
light unto yourself, and you will free yourself.
Okay, thank you.
But let's not stray away from the Buddha too quickly. The Buddha sets up a very orderly. I mean, he was so tidy. You know, he said, first know the Four Noble Truths, and once you've understood these Four Noble Truths, by understood means assimilate, like we eat food and we digest it and get the good out of it. That's what he means by understand the Four Noble Truths. Then, having understood the Four Noble Truths, that there is a way out of this life of suffering, then here's the way. And he called it the Eightfold Path. Do this, do that, do the other thing. And Swami Vivekananda said he was the greatest of karma yogis. He was also a titan of understanding of the human condition. So the Buddha also taught. And you went right to it, Sonny. That's it. Be a lamp unto yourself. The truth is resident within you, and that truth shall make you free. And thanks for pointing that out. It's there in Buddhism, just like it is in all of the others. Anything else? All right. It's 8:52. There's nothing that says we can't end the class early if there's no further comment or question to be made. We will take up chapter 6 next week. But I will just read this last again. Then we shall know that we are free. Then and then alone will all difficulties vanish. Then will all the perplexities of heart be smoothed away, all crookedness made straight. Then will vanish the delusion of manifoldness and nature, and Maya, instead of being a horrible, hopeless dream, as it is now, becomes beautiful, and the earth, instead of being a prison house, will become our playground, and even dangers and difficulties, even all sufferings, will become deified and show us their real nature, will show us that behind everything, as the substance of everything, He is standing, and that He is the one real self. And by the way, the gender, the noun, the pronoun, He, in the Shakta scriptures, it's she. There's even a way of verbalizing where it becomes gender neutral. It. But the point is that it is, as Swami Vivekananda said, each soul is potentially divine. The goal of human life is to manifest that divinity. Now, when he says potentially divine, he doesn't see maybe or maybe not. It's like there's energy in a battery. But if you just see a battery sitting and you don't know what a battery is, you have no idea that if you connect both poles of that battery to something that needs energy, energy will flow from that battery. So that's what he means by potentially divine. The truth is there. It has only to be turned from potential to actual. Each soul is potentially divine. The goal of human life is to manifest that divinity. Do this by work or worship or psychic control or philosophy, one or more or all of these, and be free. Everything else, and he goes through quite a list, everything else, he says, is a secondary detail. So each one of the paths, work, worship, psychic control, philosophy, is a path that takes us within. And having discovered what's there, it changes, the Swami says, everything. And the first thing it does is it changes your idea of who you are. You no longer see yourself as this action and experience suit that is born, lives, and dies. You see that as just a vehicle for your action and your experience.
And when the when the Swami speaks, then we shall know that we are free. That's the then is when we realize our lower self is the higher self. Is that correct?
Yes, that the higher self has always been present right here in this seeming lower self. As Swami Ranganathananda points out in his book Divine Grace, to be fully human is to be fully divine. Simply because if we take seriously the big O words, omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, if we really take those words seriously, there can be nothing but divinity, omnipresent. Nowhere it is not. It pervades everything. Omniscient, all-knowing. Well, if that presence is within us as it is in everything, then that all-knowingness is within us too. And omnipotent, all-powerful. We are not the slave of nature. We are a power much greater than that. And, this is one of the great things about that scientist Patanjali. If you read Patanjali's Yoga Sutras in a good translation, and I recommend Swami Prabhavananda's How to Know God, he just takes you through every step, right through to the fact that the final barrier for the soul fleeing into freedom is
Yes, I'm reading that one now. Brilliant writing.
Yes. So anything else from anyone?
Yeah, I do have one question.
Yes.
Jnana Yoga, can you kind of give a recap exactly of what it is? Because we talked about the various other types like karma and bhakti, but without getting too much into those other ones, just kind of help me understand this particular one.
Okay. Jnana Yoga is based on these three ideas. The first is that you learn to discriminate between what is real and what is unreal. The definition of what is real is that which is eternal, changeless. That which is unreal is that which is impermanent and always changing. So the first thing is you learn to do that. And by the way, the book to read to get a very clear grasp of this is Adi Shankaracharya's Crest Jewel of Discrimination, Vivekachudamani. Once again, a lovely translation of it is available from Swami Prabhavananda. Just a translation, not a lot of commentary. The second principle is, having learned to distinguish between the real and the unreal, you practice vairagya, renunciation. You, having seen that which is impermanent and always changing, is not the reality you are seeking, you release it. That's what's meant by renunciation. You release its hold on you and your hold on it. And this is the third principle, neti neti. Not this, not that. And you end up having eliminated everything within Maya. That is Jnana Yoga. Now, of course, there are many details about how to do this. That's why Swami Prabhavananda did that lovely translation of the Vivekachudamani, the crest jewel of discrimination. Adi Shankaracharya leads you through it step by step. It's his workbook for Jnana Yoga, for Advaita Vedanta.
I was unaware that Swami Prabhavananda had translated the Vivekachudamani. It seems that he has a wealth of writings, but I've also seen him lecture and he took on disciples. I wonder how he got all that done.
He said he did nothing. He said it was all Raja Maharaj. He said it was all his master. So that's how he did so much, because he didn't have the feeling that he was doing anything. And yes, he was very active. I mean, he started the Vedanta Society of Southern California in 1929.
Exactly. He has such, I mean, if you study his life, he has so many stupendous achievements. He accomplished a lot.
And he left the body very deliberately on July 4th, 1976, both as an homage to Swami Vivekananda, who also left very deliberately on July 4th, 1902, but also because the Swami had quite fallen in love with the American ideal of freedom. And it was an homage to the bicentennial of this country that he left on July 4th, 1976. Anything else about?
Yeah, Brother Shankara. So, would you consider works like Drisya Viveka and Aparoksha Anubhuti and all as tools towards getting to Vairagya and Viveka? Methods?
You know, these are other teachers' workbooks, dear.
Okay.
I can't say that I've studied them. I studied with Swami Sarvapriyananda the essence of Advaita Vedanta in March, actually in the spring of 2016, when I was in Hollywood because I was staying there because I was ill. If you want the quintessential distillation of these paths, I can't think of a better one than chapter 5 of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, the Master and Keshab. Keshab Chandra Sen, the head of the Brahmo Samaj, arranges a steamer journey for some of his followers, and he invites the master to be with them and talk with them. And as he's being taken out to the boat from the Dakshineshwar Ghat, from the landing place at Dakshineshwar, he goes into samadhi, and he's heard by M to ask the mother, "Oh, mother, they are so hedged about. What shall I tell them?" And then he goes into samadhi. And when he comes out of samadhi in the room where he's been taken on the steamer boat, as the steamer boat is going away on the Ganges. He begins to speak. This starts on page 132 of the Gospel. And I cannot recommend highly enough anybody reading that chapter, chapter 5. The Master defines these paths and ends up by affirming what he regularly taught, that the path of bhakti is the path that is most appropriate for most people at this time. He doesn't in any way take anything away from the other paths. He just says that for a variety of very good reasons, which he enumerates, they're difficult now. And so he says,
Thank you. Thank you, Brother Shankara. I shall read that chapter again. So.
Okay, good.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the name of the text?
The one on Advaita Vedanta, Jnana, is that the one you're talking about?
This one, chapter 5?
Oh, yes, it's the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna.
Ah, okay.
The Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, chapter 5. And don't get the abbreviated version to read it. If you're going to read this chapter, read it in the, and you can download the Gospel onto your computer, and then just go to volume 1, chapter 5. If you don't own a copy of the Gospel, you can download it for free.
Mm.
And go to volume 1, chapter 5. And there it is. Sri Ramakrishna, as he said over and over again, I say what the mother tells me to say. And in this instance, M actually heard him muttering to the mother, "Oh, mother, what shall I say to them? They are so hedged about." And then he just gives this unbelievably beautiful, it's one of the few times that he gives a lecture. At Vidyasagar's, he gives a lecture. This time he gives a lecture. Very rarely did Sri Ramakrishna give lectures. Anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, Sonny.
So how do we persuade others of the divine status of man? Because
Don't be bothering about persuading others, Sonny. Just persuade yourself. And
well, I asked the question because, like Marxism, for example, I admire the philosophy of Marxism and what it says about liberating men. But I feel like the definition of man in Marxism is man as a producer, not as a divine being. So I feel like that's problematic for kind of as kind of giving an individual a status, then giving an individual an empowering status as functioning.
I meant what I said, Sonny. If you want to be powerful in the world, transform yourself. If you want to make a difference in the world, transform yourself into a person who clearly hears and understands the voice that the Swami spoke about tonight. And as you do that, you will notice that you are different and people treat you differently. And, Marx was, as you said, there are many wonderful things about Marx, But Marx, being a man of his own time and his own inclinations, had his limitations. And so he was not seeing, he regarded religion as a,
The opiate of the masses, as I recall.
I don't know if that was him or Lenin, but in any event, it was one of the philosophers of that particular frame of reference.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. It is self-transformation. I mean, if you look what happened to Gandhi. Gandhi was just another lawyer. He was just another lawyer. Until in South Africa, something in him was awakened and he began his self-transformation. And then when he came to India, he continued that self-transformation. And what was one of the ways he did it? He read the Gita every day. He read the Gita and studied the Gita. What is Krishna telling me about how to fight? And so, I mean, Gandhi also, people have picked holes in Gandhi and, found him flawed in various ways. He transformed a subcontinent and influenced the people who helped transform this country.
I certainly feel that India would not have achieved her freedom without Gandhi's movement, yet when you become a mover of society, some people will take snipes at you. There's just no getting around that.
Well, he was shot to death with a gun.
Yeah, literally snipes this time.
India probably would have achieved her freedom, but it might have been in a very different way. Gandhiji volunteered to be what he knew would be a sacrifice. I don't mean he knew he would be shot to death. But what were his last words? Ram, Ram. He knew where he was, who he was, and where he was.
The other way for India would have been through Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, and that would have been like an expedited process, but a more violent and more costly one. There was more at stake if we would have gone down that route. The fact that Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose couldn't come to the fore as much was because the freedom movement was being it was all Gandhi at that time, and he was the face of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, as I said, I believe India would have achieved her freedom anyway, but it would have been very different.
I feel that Gandhi was to India what George Washington was to the United States, just the leader who got it, made it happen. Well, but he did it non-violently, which I respect.
Yeah, and George Washington is a remarkable character in his own right. He had a vision. George Washington had a vision of the goddess of this continent, and she instructed him. If you want to know more about that, contact Swami Atmarupananda, who's the resident minister of the Vedanta Society of Houston, Texas.
Actually, I would like to know more about that because George Washington fascinates me. I'll contact him.
Yeah.
George Washington achieved freedom for this country from the British, just as Gandhi did. So.
Well.
All right. Swami Atmarupananda of which center?
Houston. Anything else? All right, dears. This has been just exactly what's the doctor ordered, at least from here. That's how it seems. So thank you all for coming. Thank you all for being a part of this. And we'll close with this. Let there be peace in outer space. Let there be peace in the sky, on the earth, and in the waters. Let there be peace in the herbs, the plants, and the trees. May the gods be peaceful. May the whole universe be pervaded by peace. Let this infinite universal peace prevail throughout my being. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. Now that translation is by Swami Yogeshananda, who you may remember left the body on February 13th, Saturday, February 13th at 10:25 a.m. Anyone who would like to contribute a written recollection or reminiscence of Swami Yogeshananda, please send it. There will be an invitation in tomorrow's e-newsletter to that effect also. But and sometime soon, it has not been scheduled, or there's too many logistics to make it happen so quickly. There will be a memorial service at which any of you who wish to speak, we'll do it over Zoom, of course, and any of you who wish to speak will. But there will be a number of swamis who want to participate in Yogeshananda's memorial service. So that's what I mean about there's logistical concerns that. So it'll happen sometime in March, but I don't know just when yet. But in the meantime, we're going to have some very nice pictures and these recollections and reminiscences on the website and Facebook page. So anyone who would like to contribute something, either a picture or pictures, or some personal recollection of the Swami, please do that. Anything else from anyone? All right. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be cheerful. May you have peace of mind. May you go forward in Mother's loving and protective embrace. Until next we meet, which is the next potential for that is Saturday at 11 a.m. And then Sunday, the talk will be on chapter 3 of the Gita, where our beloved Krishna says, listen up. These are your fundamental delusions. Here's what to overcome. So until next time, good night all.
Good night, and thank you.
Thank you, Brother Shankara. Good night,
Good
everyone.
night, all. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.